Okay, we start now. Uh, my name is Kevin Imanuel. I'm from Hasanuddin University, student basically in geological engineering. For this time, I will present the result of international journal and a title, How Can Magnetic Forces Do Work? First, abstract. We present a sequence of activities aimed at promoting both learning about magnetic forces and student reflection about the conceptual bridge between magnetic forces on a moving charge and on the current carrying wire in magnetic field. The activity sequence designed for students in high school or on introductory physics courses has been tested with about 150 high school students and 50 pre-service teachers. Result indicate the student understanding of the direction and magnitude of the magnetic force improved markedly, and that some typical difficulties were overcome. Comparison of the two types of forces and of their effect allow focusing on the crucial difference with respect to the possibility of doing work and encourage students to search for models that are able to link on force to another. Next, introduction. Many studies have discussed student conceptual difficulties in understanding magnetic force, but when the force in experienced by a charge moving through a homogeneous magnetic field, and when it acts on current carrying wire, usually bought in university and high school physics textbooks, the force on a current uh, E I Fm equal IL times B is deduced straightforwardly from Lorentz force on a moving charge K Fl equal Kf times B without any comment on the fact that Lorentz force does not work since it is always perpendicular to charge velocity. The problem, how from a force that does not work, a force doing work can be obtained in usually described in textbooks. See, from example, the paragraph in Feynman's lecture on Physics Volume 2, page 13.3, where the usually approach in reported only a few textbooks from elementary approach, while in other, the discussion is based on quantum theory or on the Dirac model. As, as a consequence, the, the formal derivation of on the force from another is accepted by most student and high school teacher as satisfying conceptual bridge between the two forces. We designed the teacher unit based on sequence of laboratory activities with the aim of creating a experience-based environment where different critical aspects of magnetic force could be focused upon and discussed. The sequence aimed at undergraduate and high school students was purpose from preliminary testing by student teacher enrolled in postgraduate course for teacher presentation. It, it was also tested on several group of high school students, about 150 several group of high school students, about 150 students in total, involved in a program funded by Ministry of Education aimed at preparing students for science studies and at university. Next, the work with these two different types of learning was aimed at first assessing the effectiveness of the sequence of experiment in developing high school student understanding of magnetic force and promoting student-teacher reflection on the basic physics content. Second, exploring what concepts, ideas, and conceptual correlation are used by student teacher to construct a conceptual bridge between the magnetic force on a moving charge and the force acting on the current carrying wire. And the last, refining the sequence design in order to make it suitable for high school students and at the same time appropriate to teacher attitude and need. Next, sequence of activities and experiment. First, sequence was designed by taking into account research result about student difficulty with the topic and teacher direct experience with student. It is organized into the three phases, include experiment and theoretical discussions. The first two phases, I am determining independently the force acting on current carrying wire and that acting for freely moving charts. The third phase, I am to build conceptual bridge between the two forces, highlighting the inadequacy of the most commonly used approach. The second experiment are supported by computer-based laboratory and multimedia tools that, as research has shown, can contribute to grading. Next, for exper next, for experience by current carrying wires, first, three different experiments are proposed to help students understand the direction and magnitude of magnetic force experienced by current carrying wire located in homogeneous magnetic field. The first experiment measure the force as a function of the intensity of current. The second investigates the depends of the force on the leg of the wire, and the third the depends of the force on the angle between the current and the field lines. Analysis and interpretation of the experiment result help the student construct or verify the relationship. The experimental setup in response in figure one, and we can see in this, and each group of students was provided with two permanent magnets, several meters of wire, a DC or power supply, or a battery, and work with a square coil with the different number of turn, and W equal 113, 115, 119, 230, and 250. The sensors are connected to personal computer and data studio software, record and display force versus current. And the last concluding remarks. First, some laboratory activities devoted to study to magnetic forces we design and test through a student teacher enrolled in postgraduate course for teacher presentation, and through several groups of high school students. Our results show the effectiveness of the sequence of experiment is supporting high school student understanding of magnetic forces and in promoting student-teacher reflection on basic physics contents. And the second, we found the student-teacher ideas about activity sequence summarized in point 1 until 3 of section using the sequence with student-teacher and in good agreement with the result of night in testing the experiment with high school student. And the last, we also investigate what models, idea, and link are used by student and student teacher to construct a conceptual bridge between the magnetic force and moving charge and on a current carrying wire. Maybe that's all. Next, Zulkifli.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I want to present to you about the detection of the domain wall distribution and nucleation in ferromagnetic nanocontact structures by magnetic force microscopy. Let me introduce myself. My name is Reski Syahbani Yudisha. From geology engineering by group 2. Okay, first I wanna explain to you my abstract. Ferromagnetic nanocontact structures have attracted broad interest due to their potential application in nano-device as well as in the fundamental studies of domain wall location and controllable pinning, which are key factors to understand the physics of nano-device based on these structures. In this in this paper, we investigate the distribution of domain wall in permalloy nanocontacts before and after magnetic field utilizing magnetic force microscopy or MFM. We find that the domain wall located in the vicinity of the nanocontacts which is not the exact contact position as supposed when a field of 5 Co was applied. The mechanism behind such observation may mainly due to the energy equilibrium inside the sample. Moreover, mismatched nanocontact structures were designed and fabricated with domain wall pin in the exact contact position, which suggests that the mismatched contact structures may be an ideal structure to investigate the interplay between the spin polarized current and domain wall. Next, introduction. In ferromagnetic metals, the interaction between electrons and a domain wall can give rise to domain wall motion due to the S to D exchange created by the current carrying electrons on the domain wall magnetic configuration. Current, current, current indicate this continuous resistance change has been observed experimentally and is attributed to the domain wall scattering in ferromagnetic nanocontact structures when the contact width is less than a critical value. Simulation results show a domain wall is pinned at the contact position and can be pushed away by the spin polarized current. However, whether the domain wall is defined exactly at the contact position has not been directly confirmed experimentally. In this study, ferromagnetic nanocontact structures with different widths were fabricated utilizing electron beam lithography and light-off process. The domain wall distribution of these structures at the demagnetization and remnant state were investigated by MPM. Due to the magnetic shape anisotropy, it is supposed that magnetic domain walls are confined in the contact position when the magnetization of two parts magnetic nanowires are aligned to be antiparallel to each other. However, the domain wall has not been trapped in the contact position from our direct observation by MPM technique. In order to ascertain that the distribution of domain wall around the contact region, we fabricated mismatched nanocontact structure. The result could provide insight for in-depth understanding of micromagnetic structure response to geometrical constraints in nanometer scale and to the applied magnetic fields. Next, I will explain to you experimental details. The sample were fabricated by electron beam lithography and lead-off process based on CO2 or SE substrates. The process started with spin coating the substrate with 49.5 pMMI and pre-baked at 180 1 Celsius for 60 seconds on a hot plate. Then E-beam lithography was carried out using the red 150 system with electron energy of 10 keV. The sample after experiment were developed in MEBK IPA or one at 1 Celsius for 30 seconds and runs in IPA about 30 seconds and then blown dry with pure nitrogen gas. After exposure and development, the patterns with a length of 100 μm and weight of 1 μm were defined, which have nanocontact structures at the halfway. Permallow film about 30 nm thick was deposited by a thermal evaporation system. Then an AU capping layer about 2 nm thick was deposited on top of the permalloy layer to prevent it from oxidation. After the ultrasonic assisted lift-off process in acetone, the permalloy nanocontact structures with different weights were obtained using MPM system together with atomic pulse microscopy or APM. The permalloy contact structures were observed in both their demagnetized or S-grown and remnant states at room temperature with a vertically magnetized tip. The commercial SE probe with COCl coating was used, and the distance between the probe and sample was set as 5 nm for the AVM tapping mode and about 60 nm per measurement. For a soft magnetic nanowire that is less than 100 nm wide, the orientation of the magnetization is restrict along the wire due to shape anisotropy, which means that the magnetization of nanowire will be a single domain. However, the magnetization for the constriction structure altered by the shape which will display a new distribution. The light and dark contrast corresponds to the stretch of the stray field gradient on the sample surface. Two domain walls were located in the gradual narrowed region as shown in Fig. The two domains walls are asymmetrically around the contact due to the magnetization confined in the narrow region as is different and convergent respectively. You can see this is the picture of experiment. Okay, the last conclusion. Permalloy nanocontact structures were fabricated and characterized by magnetic force microscopy in both the magnetized and remnant states. Two domain walls are observed in the position around the narrow parts along the axis direction of nanowire, which is due to spontaneous magnetization related with the constriction structure. After applying a magnetic field in the longitudinal direction of the nanocontact plane, a new domain wall occurred near the original pinning position. This indicates that the remnant magnetization in the samples can change the domain wall distribution. Moreover, the geometrical structure can affect the domain wall nucleation by comparing normal contacts with mismatched contact structure. Our result may provide insight for in-depth understanding of micromagnetic structure, respond to geometrical constraints in nanometer scale, and to explore the effect of the magnetic fields. Okay, that's enough from me. My friend can share the material next. Thank you.
So guys, first my name is Revanya Zaskia Meiliana from Geological Engineering. Here I want to present the journal. The title is Force and Work on a Wire in a Magnetic Field by Jose Arnaldo Redins. First, introduction. Classically, a static magnetic field B does not work because the magnetic force F mag equals Q VB on a particle of charge Q is always perpendicular to its velocity V. This property can be extended to the magnetic force acting on a macroscopic number of particles, such as the conduction electron in a current-carrying wire. This remarkable property of the magnetic force give rise to a number of apparent paradoxes. An interesting example is the acceleration of atom by the magnetic field in a Stern-Gerlach experiment. In this case, the atom with orbital magnetic moments accelerate in the non-uniform magnetic field at the expense of their internal kinetic energy. For the electron spin contribution to the magnetic moments, the situation is not as clear. If the magnetic field does not work, then the electron would need to have an intrinsic rotational kinetic energy associated with its spin. Next, Griffiths discussed an example in which the perpendicular magnetic force F mag equals IAB leaves a rectangular loop of wire with sides A and B in which there is a constant current E. A rectangular loop of wire of mass MW hangs vertically with one side in a constant and uniform magnetic field B, which points into the peg in the region above the horizontal lines. Guys, can you see the figure? An electric current generated by a power supply not shown in the figure circulates clockwise. The result is we model the current carrying loop of wire as a superposition of a rectangular rigid loop of mass M with moving conduction electron and a rectangular rigid loop of mass M containing the lattice of positive ion. The two loops rise together along the y-axis with velocity v and vt, and at the same time, the conduction electrons are circulating around the loop with the constant drift velocity vd associated with the current I. Negative charge distribution can such a decomposition of a wire into positive and negative charge distribution can be found in literature, such as in the derivation of the magnetic field of a current carrying wire using relativistic concept. Next, two external agents exert force on these two loops of charges, the magnetic field and the power supply which pulls the electron along the circuit. Our simplifying assumption of a constant electric current I means that the power supply has to be a current source and not a voltage source such as a battery, which will produce a circuit of constant EMF and a variable current. The two cases are similar, but for a constant, the loops rise with constant acceleration, whereas for a constant EMF, the acceleration is variable and the velocity of the loops attains a constant limiting value. Conclusion, the role of the magnetic force here is to redirect the horizontal force of the power supply into the vertical motion of the loops of charge. This mechanism of redirection is accomplished through the electric force F, which lifts the ions and originates in the surface charge induced of the wire by the magnetic force. Uh, uh, yes, guys, I think that's how I presented. Next.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zulkifli from Hasanuddin University, basically geological engineering. Now I want to presentation about international journal, the title of Quantitative Analysis of Magnetization Reversal in Paternate Strip Wire by Magnetic Force Microscopy. The journal from Department of Material Science and Engineering, National Chiao Tung University, Taiwan. About abstract, was used to investigate the magnetization reversal process in a paternate strip wire of permalloy thin film. The magnitude of the phase shift of tapping mode MFM changed with the varying interactive magnetic force between the magnetic tip and the sample. By analyzing the change in follows of the phase shift, the behaviors of magnetization reversal of different local regions in a paternate strip wire can be quantitatively analyzed. The intensity of the phase shift in the wire and stronger than in the narrower one. Next. This introduction. Magnetic force microscopy has been used for years to investigate magnetization reversal behaviors because of not only its high resolution, but also its ability to observe different local regions in a paternate sample. The intensity of the phase shift does not directly stand for the magnetization magnitude, but only reflects the vertical component of the magnetic flux drying out of magnetic thin films. Taking advantage of the phase analysis, one can locally investigate the magnetic reversal process in a paternate sample and even compare different local sections. About experiment, in a journal explained, fabricate the paternate permalloy, then film out of the combination of two strip wires with different widths by EDA, lithography, and following sputtering deposition and lift-off techniques. The width of the narrower wire and the wider one were 200 and 450 nanometer respectively, and the lengths were 4,500,000 and 5,500,000 nanometer respectively, while the thickness was 30 nanometer. Measurements were performed by APM or NPM tapping model to detect the topography and magnetic image of the pattern at simultaneously applied magnetic field of 200 U of minus 200 U aligned to the longitudinal direction of the strip wires. Okay, this about result and discussion. EPM upper diagram and FPM middle diagram image, and the profile lower diagram of the base of the line scan in the EPM image as well. The configuration of the magnetization in the pattern is briefly considered as macroscopic uniform, and in the same direction of magnetization in both parts with different widths, since only the vertical component of the interactively magnetic force between the NFM chip and the sample contributes to the signals of the NFM image. The relatively darker or brighter signals in the FM image can only appear at the regions in which magnetic flux stray out of the film plane. In our case, these regions are at both ends of the pattern as well as in the section in which the width changes abruptly. Next, the absolute values of the phases were presented with the longitudinal distance in the pattern. As we mentioned above, phase shift can obviously present only the regions in which magnetic flux stray out of the film plane, since section C, B, and E radiate relatively strong magnetic flux, the phase intensities appear more evidently at the center of these regions and rapidly decrease at race away from the centers. Okay, about the conclusion, in this journal explain demonstrates the magnetic behaviors in the different local section of a pattern strip. A pattern strip wire can be individually separated and compared with each other. The intensity of the phase shift in the wider end is stronger than in the narrower one. In contrast, the coercive force, which is defined by the reverse and decided of polus of phase shift in the narrow end, 9U, is larger than that in the wider one, 8U. This is due to a strong anisotropic effect, and to the H in the next section could become strongly affected by the position of the head scale magnetic configuration in the two parts of the strip wire. This results in a small H in the next section. Furthermore, with a simple next connection in strip knife wire, we can easily to change a single domain configuration to a two single domain magnetic configuration. Okay. Maybe this is all we can explain for the presentation of the magnetic force on wire theory test. More and less, please forgive so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.